Good afternoon. I'm calling to order the June 3rd Committee of the Whole for Planning and Public Works here at the City of Redmond. All council members are in attendance, and we have 9 items on our agenda tonight, starting with the action items. The first is from Planning and Public Works. And with us at the desk, we have Deputy Director Seraphy Allen and Linnea Taylor for the 2025-2026 annual Orca card contract renewal. Take it away.
Great, thank you, and good afternoon, Council. I'm happy to introduce Linnea Taylor, who will talk about this item.
Hello, everyone. As mentioned, I'm here speaking to the 2025-26 annual Orca contract renewal, which covers City of Redmond employee transit and van pool rides. Still utilizing the pay-as-you-go payment structure that started back in 2020 for transit rides, meaning we just get billed every month. In conjunction with both the 2-line opening in April 2024 and the most recent in May 2025, we opened Orca card usage for both personal usage and commute trips for employees. And so far, we've noticed an uptick in trips, about 63%. We'll continue to monitor usage and costs and make adjustments if necessary, especially with the 2026 and light rail opening over 90. And we haven't also, on that note too, haven't noticed a huge uptick in amount of Orca card users. So new employees are using their card, but I think the movement in the trips is more from one person using it more times. This year we've paid about $13,513 in transit Orca fees. Renewal of this contract would ensure a transportation benefit for employees, as well as keep us in compliance with both state and state laws and city goals. Total cost for this contract isn't anticipated to exceed $30,000, and this contract renewal was included in the adopted budget for the Commuter Assistance Office. Looking to take this item to consent on June 17th. I'm here for any questions if you have any.
Thank you so much. Council, are there any questions on this item? Councilmember Nueva Camina.
Thank you. And thanks for joining us today, Linnea. I had a question on the 13,513. You had already answered that, saying that that was for this year. So that was that question. And then in the agenda, it said that the pay-as-you-go payment structure started in the summer of 2020. Now, just over $1,000 per month, then it averages out thereabout for the current year. Do we have the numbers for what it looked like before the contracts that we can do like a comparison of the different pay structures?
So yes, we have the comparison. It was they kind of formalized it was paying all at once and upfront, and so they base it off of the year's prior usage, so we would pay in lump sum. And I don't know that it's broken out, but I can absolutely pull up those numbers. But the cost was significantly higher when we paid the full amount upfront versus individualized actual trips. But I can absolutely pull that data.
And I figured that it would have been as such.
Yep.
And just to be clear, I'm fully in support of this going forward for consent, and I'm not holding up to look at that. It was more of a curiosity.
Yeah,
thanks.
We can get those numbers.
I think maybe, Linnea, the question would be, did we see an increase of trips prior to 2020 or employees using the Orca cards? Or would you say it's about the same?
I think it's hard to compare apples to apples because they didn't give me that every month breakdown of trips. It was just kind of in conjunction, lopped together. We anticipate this also, so I just don't know. I don't think it was super clear to break down, but I can go back and review. I mean, it's been 5 years also, so maybe that'll be a refresher once I go back.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and it's something we're going to continue to track. We also, the council had funded a position last year to help try and increase our employees utilizing additional options, and so that's something we'll be taking a look at more, especially I think when we do open across the other side of the lake is when we're really hoping to see that upward trend.
Wonderful, thank you. Are there any other questions from the council on this item? Any concerns with this item going to consent on June 17th? Wonderful, we'll have this one back. Thank you so much for your work on this. Item number 2 on our agenda tonight is authorizing application for countywide center certifications. Deputy Director Allen and her team, looks like Becky Fry is coming to the table, as well as Lauren Alpert. Welcome.
Greetings again. Our next item, as previously stated, is authorizing for a countywide growth center in Marymore and a countywide manufacturing industrial center in Southeast Redmond. Right? I'm on the right topic. Yeah, okay. You looked at me funny, so I wasn't sure. This is part of implementing the Redmond 2050 Comprehensive Plan. We ask that this resolution be placed on the June 17th consent agenda, and I'll turn it over to Lauren and Becky.
Thank you, Council, and thank you, Seraphy. So in the Redmond 2050 Comprehensive Plan, the countywide centers play an important role in providing opportunities for jobs, housing, recreation. These places serve as local focal points for local and county investment. And in the Redmond 2050 plan and process, we identified Marymore Village as a place transitioning from a local center to a countywide center. We also supported the creation of the Industrial and Manufacturing Countywide Growth Center in Southeast Redmond that will support equitable access to living wage jobs and also play a key role in the county's economy. With these centers identified in our local Redmond 2050 plan, we're starting the certification process with the county, with King County, to have them certified as countywide centers. That application is due October 1st, and it requires authorization from Redmond to proceed with the application process. Another key part of this effort is the Southeast Redmond Market Study. That contract is on your consent agenda for this evening, and I spoke about it at a previous committee meeting. Once again, thank you for your time and your consideration in putting this on the consent agenda for June 17th.
Thank you. Oh, anything to add, Becky? No? Okay. Are there questions from the council on this item? Councilmember Nueva Camina.
Thank you. Just a quick, for those that are listening, sometimes we use terms that we understand, but if somebody is listening, they may not understand a countywide center versus a local center.
So, yeah, it's really easy to get confused about the different terminology with centers. In the past, we just had a general urban centers conversation, and it was just downtown and Overlake for decades. In this last periodic review cycle, regionally, there was now a new centers designation framework at PSRC level, at metro centers and urban centers, and also new countywide centers at the county level. And so what these are just different ways of grouping and acknowledging that there's different levels of activity in each of those and different purposes and intents. So Marymore Village, for instance, we adopted as a local center because there was no countywide center framework at the time. Now that there is, being a designated countywide center opens us up to different grant opportunities, just different designation capabilities. So it is still totally within the city's jurisdiction, but putting it in a countywide center makes it under the King County countywide planning policies for growth allocations and planning and infrastructure purposes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the council on this item? I'll offer just one last comment because I serve on the Growth Management Planning Council for King County. We have it on our work plan later this year to shepherd these through. So I'll be able to represent Redmond in that way and look forward to that opportunity. Are there any objections to this item going to consent on June 17th? Seeing none, we will move on to our public works items. Thank you so much, team. The next item on our agenda is to approve the consultant agreement with Consor for the Willows Road Water Main Extension Project. This is from Northeast 116th Street to Northeast 124th Street. With us today is Deputy Director Chris Stanger and Senior Engineer Lisa Rigg. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Council Member. Christopher Stenger, Deputy Director, Public Works, Utilities, and Environmental Programs, and as stated, Lisa Rigg, Senior Engineer. We're here requesting approval of a consultant agreement with Consor in the amount of $435,515 for design services for the Willow Road Water Main Extension that goes from Northeast 116th Street to Northeast 124th Street. Lisa's here with me with a little details, and we're standing by for questions after Lisa provides some details.
All right, so thank you for your time today. The project consists of about 1,300 feet of new water main. It's going to provide water main where there is currently a gap right now between the water main that was built by the Proctor Willows development and the water to the south. And so it will provide not only a more rigorous, redundant system, but it will provide water service to several properties along that line that don't currently have it available. The project will require about a quarter mile of lane resurfacing and restriping as part of the project. There are 3 culverts that will be crossed, but we are not planning to do any work on those at this time as part of this project. And as Chris said, the consultant contract is $435,515, and the total project budget right now is $2.1 million.
Thank you for that introduction, Lisa. Are there questions from the council on this item? I'll go ahead and jump in with a couple. When I started to read the memo, I was like, and when is the ILA coming? And looked it up, and we actually did the ILA back in 2021. So this is, and is something we need to deliver on to our partners at the City of Kirkland by next year. I guess the main question is, because the developer who is the development that is going to be connected to the city water supply was built by a developer who used a fee in lieu in order to make the city whole. That's usually the impact of that mechanism. It looks to me like maybe we didn't collect enough from this developer. And if that is the case, have we fixed that rate, or is that still pending work to do? I want to make sure we're not coming up against this again.
Okay, so there are two different elements in the development agreement, and there is a it's not a latecomers. Basically, all the properties that will benefit from that water main extension are subject to an additional connection charge. That's what it was. And so they have paid their additional connection charge, and as other properties develop, they will pay their share of the total estimate of the project cost. And so that's one thing. The development agreement covered a section of sidewalk and culvert replacement, which we have taken out of this project because we did not have enough funding to do the work under the contribution. And I was not part of the discussions on that. I know there was a construction estimate for the sidewalk part of it. The fee in lieu for the culvert may have not been intended to cover the full cost because it's really not their full cost burden to replace an aging culvert.
Thank you. And I will just reflect back something, and then I see a hand down the line. So the developer that paid the fee in lieu, voluntary agreement for payment of funds in fee of lieu frontage improvements, that was for the sidewalks and the culverts. When you say we have taken it out of this project,
Yes.
does that mean we are holding those dollars on the side to do that work at another time? Or what is happening with the dollars that have been collected?
So that is the case. There's actually not because it's a voluntary contribution, there's not a specific time limit on those funds. So we are able to use them at a later date. The original thought was to do the culvert work and the sidewalk as part of this project, but the difficulty with that is that the permitting is quite extensive because it's a fish-bearing culvert, and so it would have pushed the project construction out beyond what we'd agreed to in the Kirkland agreement, the ILA. So we took the project back through governance and revised the scope to separate out the two projects.
Okay, I have one more follow-up, but I'll give it to President Kritzer. I saw your hand up.
I think you asked one of my follow-ups, but I am curious, so when would we expect to see the sidewalk and the culvert pieces come forward likely?
I can take a look into that, council member, and check to see where it's at on the capital plan.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions from the council on this item? I guess that's my main concern there, Deputy Director, as well, because, all right, so I live in a neighborhood that just got a bunch of wonderful new bicycle and pedestrian improvements, and then development came along, and we would have loved that development to come along before this CIP project that we waited for 10 years to install these wonderful new facilities. So every day I watch these facilities that we just installed get eaten up, and I know that they will be repaired, but are we about to lay 1,300 feet of new water main, and then next year dig it all back up in order to put in culverts? I really want to avoid that.
So I would say that the culvert replacement project, there are 3 culverts kind of in the zone. 2 of them are fish bearing. It's a substantial project, and it would be several years permitting and moving forward in the CIP. So it certainly wouldn't be next year.
Okay, well, I'll take the remainder of my questions offline. Are there any more questions from the council? Or any objections to this item going to consent on June 17th? Mr. Field, you have a question? Yes.
So what alternatives did you look at, other than the one you chose? What other options were there for this work?
On that, based on the timeline, and this was discussed when I was on a leave of absence, but based on the timeline of a meeting the Kirkland ILA, this moving forward with the water line was the only option that was brought to the table, council member.
So to meet the parameter of schedule, this is the choice you had to make to reduce scope.
Yes, council member.
Great, thank you.
I guess one last question would be, have we spoken with our partners in Kirkland about extending the terms of the ILA in order to do a more comprehensive project and give ourselves more time on the permitting?
We have not. I think one of the main factors is that there are properties currently that have buildings on them that are not served by water, and this will allow those properties to have water available. The culvert project is a much larger project, and I'm not sure where we are on funding with, full funding for that project, so it's not in the 6-year CIP at this point. We would have, if we would have done the project that's on the book, that was originally on the books, it would have been replacing 1 culvert. And the reality is that it would make much more sense long-term and with traffic impacts and construction impacts to just do all 3 of the culverts under 1 project. And so that was a big part of the decision-making to, separate that out and push that out farther.
Okay, thank you. Council President Kritzer.
Sorry, I just had one more question. So I can really understand with the culvert piece how it could delay it quite a bit. Did we look at just the sidewalk piece? Also, I guess I will note, I wonder, can you share with us a little bit more about what that vision for that sidewalk was? Was it making like a key connection, or?
So it is not really a key connection. In fact, we brought in transportation early on just to make sure that it was okay to separate that out. The problem with the sidewalk is that portion of sidewalk is adjacent to a stream and wetland crossing, and so it's impossible to build the sidewalk without triggering the culvert work.
And I will note, if you look at that location, that if we're thinking about connected walking trails, is that's right where the Redmond Central Connector 3 will provide additional kind of connections.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. Seeing no other questions from the council, I clearly have a few more questions, so I'm going to follow up offline. But I'll call for, is there any objection to this item going to consent? Looks like not, so we'll plan to have it back there. And thank you for taking the extra time to explain the nuances. Appreciate that.
Very happy to. Thank you so much.
Sure, you bet. The next item on our agenda, item number 4, is to approve the consultant agreement with Dow for the pedestrian and bicycle safety improvements project. This is 3 projects lumped together: 164th Avenue Northeast, East Lake Sammamish Parkway, and Northeast 104th Streets. Introducing this item is Deputy Director Stanger and Paul Cho. Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm here joined with traffic engineer and manager Paul Cho, and we're here to request the following to be approved: consultant agreement with Dowell for the pedestrian bicycle safety improvements on 164th Avenue Northeast, East Lake Sammamish Parkway, Northeast 104th Street project, and we'd like this to be placed on the consent agenda for June 16th. I'm handing it over to Paul for any more details and questions.
Sure. Just to, thank you, council members. Just to elaborate just a little bit more on some of the details, it is 3 projects. It started life as 3 individual projects, but because of the nature of the safety improvements, we are moving it forward as one larger project to take advantage of some economy of scale. So the first location is on Northeast 104th Street, a little east of the high school, and we'll be looking at some channelization improvements, some center median, and then also marked crosswalks with flashing beacons. We're also looking at 164th Avenue, which a few years back we did lower the speed limit south of Northeast 90th Street, and this is a follow-up project to have the channelization markings follow kind of the encouraging lower speeds on that section of 164th. We'll also be marking a crosswalk with flashing beacons. And then East Lake Sammamish Parkway, there's been a strong cry for pedestrian safety crossing from multifamily residential on the east side of East Lake Sammamish Parkway to a side access to Marymore Park, and then also the East Lake Sammamish Trail. So the improvements, as I mentioned, will be channelization, some center medians, ADA improvements, and flashing beacons for pedestrians.
Thank you, Paul. These are some of the most requested items in our city, so excited to see these come along. Are there questions from the council on this item? All right, I'm already seeing thumbs up. Any objections to this item going to consent? Wonderful. Let's move forward on these. Thank you so much, Paul. Really appreciate it. Item number 5 on our agenda is approval of a settlement agreement with King County regarding asbestos cement pipe removal associated with the Lake Hills and Northwest Lake Sammamish Sewer Upgrade Project. Introducing this item, Deputy Director Stanger and Doug DeVry. Welcome.
Thank you, council member. As joining me tonight is Utilities Engineering Manager Doug DeVry. And as introduced, we are here to seek approval of placing the aforementioned settlement agreement with the City of Redmond and King County regarding asbestos cement pipe removal associated with the Lake Hills and Northwest Lake Sammamish Sewer Upgrade Project, also known as Lake Hills Trunk Line, on the June 17th, 2025 consent agenda. So a little bit about this project. This is a major regional infrastructure investment, and the agreement addresses how out-of-service asbestos cement pipe will be left in place after the upgrade and is managed, and who is responsible for any future costs. So background of the project is led by King County and is designed to upgrade 4.5 miles of aging gravity sewer infrastructure. And what we're going to be talking about today is 2 siphon segments that currently serve portions of Redmond. As part of the construction, King County will remove some of the AC main in the areas. And if you look at Appendix A, Attachment A, there's 3 circles that you'll see drawn on that. And these are the locations of 3 circles represent 3 future capital projects that the City of Redmond has where this line would interfere. and the discussions have been going on, I believe, since at least 2020, 2021, or pre-COVID around there. And there was a disagreement on the interpretation of an RCW of if a utility is left in there and we had a project, we'd be on the hook for the full, if we needed to remove it for said project, we'd be on the hook for that as a city. We disagreed, and then this agreement will, come to the conclusion of where we would pay for the removal in our project, and then we dispose of it, and then the county would reimburse us for the disposal of the AC pipe when the project goes. So in this dual siphon area, it's around almost 4/10 of a mile section. It's two pipes that lay down on there, and there's 4,100 feet in these intersections. Once you take the pipe out of the intersections, you're looking at 3,972 feet that will remain in place. And this will be filled, these pipes will be treated and filled with controlled density fill, and this, structural integrity of the pipe in the ground is essentially what that keeps when you fill the pipe. And it's sealed to the standards approved by EPA, OSHA, the Puget Sound Clean Air Authority, and Washington L&I, Laborers and Industry. This method is supported by the EPA's alternative work practice, and that's an attachment we took. It's a 98-page document, but we took the section out of there. We're abandoning the pipe in places, one of the approved practices from the EPA under the National Emissions Standards for Hazardous Air Pollutants, NESAP, which permits the safe abandonment in place with proper containment, as discussed. And this will reduce the risk of asbestos exposure more effectively than the traditional removal, while also minimizing traffic disruptions and construction impact on the community. So the settlement agreement with the county resolves differing interpretations, as stated before, from RCW 35.58.330 regarding who is responsible for the removal cost if abandoned pipe needs to be disturbed in the future. For instance, on those 3 capital projects that I mentioned in the location of the area. 2 of them are culverts. One's for Idlewood Creek, and the other one's for Marina Villa. And then there's a lift station project for Lift Station 5 that we'll have in the future in that area that will affect that pipe. So by approving this agreement, it allows the county to move forward with permitting, and they're scheduled for a hearings examiner on August 2025. It also clarifies future responsibilities, so there's no ambiguity or delay should Redmond need to conduct utility road work in these areas. It enables regional project to proceed without while protecting Redmond's interests with respect to public safety, future cost, and environmental compliance. And I'm standing by for any further questions.
Thank you both, appreciate that. This is a big one, so what questions does the council have? Councilmember Fields.
I'm just curious, who proposed this solution? Was it the county or us?
So this was a mutual agreement on there. It took, I believe I got involved about 12 months ago on there. So it took us 9 months to come to this solution. Originally, it was take the money and you're on the hook, for everything, and it wasn't enough money when you estimate things out on there. So we worked together with partnering with the county, and came to this solution on there. It took a little bit of back and forth tennis, but this.
Did you say back and forth tennis?
Back and forth tennis a little bit, but we got to a solution to at least not be on the hook for that full amount, and then have the county maintain responsibility.
So usually in a tennis analogy, somebody wins the point, but you're saying we both won the point.
Is it love? I definitely believe it's school.
Okay, it was love. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from the council on this item? Councilmember Kritzer?
So just to be clear, with this action, we're taking on responsibility in the future for paying for removal, but the county would still be, the main thing the county would be on the hook for is disposal?
That is correct, Councilmember.
Okay, Thanks.
Which the deputy director has also made sure is clear that is the more expensive part. Yeah, wonderful. All right, any other questions? Any objections to this item going to consent? I seeing none, we will move forward with this one. Thank you. It's been a long time coming, so really appreciate your work on this. We're keeping the same team here for item number 6, which is the ordinance, approving an ordinance amending Redmond Municipal Code for utilities.
Thank you, Councilmember. And again, myself, Deputy Director Stinger, Public Works, and joining me is Engineering Manager Doug DeVries. And as introduced, we are here to seek approval of placing the aforementioned ordinance update, including middle housing language to Redmond Municipal Code on the June 17th, 2025 consent agenda. We're here to provide a brief overview of the proposed updates to the Redmond Municipal Code related to utility infrastructure connections billing, specifically in response to the recent changes to middle housing regulations. This update is a technical follow-up to the zoning code amendments you reviewed earlier in this year, and it's essential to align utility policies with our broader housing goals. This item was initially presented to council in March of 2025. At the time, however, the fee schedule reference was outdated. Since then, the staff from Finance, Planning, and Public Works have collaborated to integrate middle housing language into the appropriate utility fee schedules, aligning these with comparable residential structures such as single-family and multifamily houses. It's important to note that these fees are intended as a transitional measure. A more comprehensive rate study planned for later this year will review and establish a permanent utility fee structure specifically for middle housing. And I'll turn it over to Doug for a little more information on the technical aspect.
All righty. Thanks, Chris. This update supports the city's efforts to encourage middle housing development, increasing housing options and affordability. The change clarifies how utility charges are assessed, preventing inconsistencies and ensuring each resident is billed fairly. It supports housing growth by providing clear utility billing guidelines. The city reduces barriers to middle housing development, making it easier for property owners and developers to invest in diverse housing solutions. And as Chris mentioned, it aligns with the existing rate structures on a temporary basis, at least. Some of the changes involved include updates to allow up to 4 middle housing units to share a side sewer lateral from the current 2 units per side sewer lateral, added meter requirements for middle housing, added threshold for water service installation by city or developer, added middle housing definition, added section for middle housing to sewer and service rates and charges, and ensure that there's still a low income credit for those who require it, added middle housing as a classification for utility accounts, identified middle housing as unit ownership instead of parcel ownership, add middle housing to the description of utility billing statements, define the recipients of those statements for middle housing, added middle housing parcel to rates and charges definitions, add notion that all developed parcels will be charged the stormwater fee, add middle housing to the other developed parcel classification for monthly service charge for the system of charges. And for classification of clearing, add middle housing to building projects classifications and remove duplexes. Update language in table to match process regarding plan review. Any questions on those?
Before I kick it off to the council, can I ask the two of you or one of you to address, earlier today we spoke about an omission in the billing section. I believe it's 13.17. Could you speak to that?
So taking a look at the submittal, it was a condensed version of the ordinance. I do have the full ordinance here printed out, and I can also email.
Can I just hold that up for a second? Yeah. So we've been working on middle housing. Thank you for the visual aid. We've been working to implement middle housing here in the city of Redmond, and this is what it takes to make sure that folks living there have water and sewer connections and all of that. And This is very cool to hold that in your hand. I look forward to adopting this. So what Chris is saying is earlier today in the billing section, I identified this like trailing sentence where it didn't appear the paragraph was there. Chris is saying it's in the big version. We just had a condensed version in the packet. In that case, I have no further questions. Are there questions from the council? Councilmember Fields.
As we move from this transition to a more permanent rates, two things do you expect to see? Do you have any sense of whether this is going to be higher rates, lower rates, and what are the drivers? What kinds of things will you be focusing on in your evaluation? What will drive those rates?
On there, the intent, to encourage middle housing, and this is from my professional opinion, you have to make it affordable. The current rate structure is the reason, looking around at other municipalities and counties around here, no one's on the same page per se. Some of them, when you look at some of the fees, and I won't mention the places, but, I noticed one, there was a $20,000 a unit fee, and it contradicts, the intent if you want to encourage something. So, long story short is part of the rate study is, we're going to take a comprehensive look, from planning side, public works side, and get a rate involved that, promotes this vice, hinders the developers going towards this type of housing.
Yeah, and I had hoped that would be your response, because I think this is a place where we really do need to incentivize and get this sort of missing inventory of housing. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions from the council on this item? All right, well, it is really exciting, even though it's mostly about water connections. And are there any objections to this item going to consent on June 17th? Okay, wonderful. Well, we look forward to that and having the full ordinance in our packet here in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is to prepare for a study session that is coming up on June 24th. Are you good, Chris? We have an item from, okay, yes, excuse me. The next item on our agenda is an item to prepare for a study session on June 24th, the Redmond Municipal Code update, overview, and proposed changes to vehicles, traffic, streets, and sidewalk code. Introducing this item, Deputy Director Stanger, Rob Crittenden, thank you for joining us, and Paul is back. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Council Member. Just quick introduction. I'm joined with City Engineer Rob Crittenden and Traffic Engineer and Manager Paul Cho, and they're here to talk about the Redmond Municipal Code update and overview and proposed changes to vehicles, traffic, streets, and sidewalks, and give you a overview on how Public Works is going to approach this. And I'm going to hand it over to Rob.
All right, thank you, Chris. Good afternoon. You've seen me before as a construction project manager. I'm now the city engineer, and beside me is the city traffic engineer, and we have a deputy public works director here. So it's a good example of things that we need to clarify when we work on the Redmond Municipal Code update. So again, what I'm doing today is just providing you an overview of what's to come over the summertime. We have several study sessions planned and things such as that. The main purpose of this update is to clarify roles and responsibilities for the Public Works Director, City Engineer, City Traffic Engineer, the Utility Engineering Manager. There's a lot of kind of cross referencing within the code, so that needs to be cleaned up, and that will help us improve our operational consistency within the department and also within our interaction with other departments here at the city. The update will also remove outdated terms and code references. You know, we'll lose some of the horse-drawn carts and the $5 penalties for doing something that doesn't agree with the ordinance or something like that. And also we're making changes that are needed to align with Public Works' effort to get accreditation through APWA. So Although I don't think you'll see a lot of the actual accreditation documents that we're working on, the policies and processes, there are pieces that come out of that require like a code, usually just a code clarification to say who's doing what to follow those policies. So there's, as I'd mentioned before, there are 3 study sessions that are scheduled with City Council to review the changes. The first one is June 24th, and that is to discuss primarily titles 10 and 12, which are traffic and street related. And as I mentioned before, Paul Cho is here, and also Patty Criddle from Traffic Operations is here as well. If there's any specific questions about that today, but really the meat of that discussion will occur on the 24th. Then the session on July 22nd will cover titles involving water, sewer, and building. So you'll see Doug again, he's still back there, to talk about utilities. And then the third one is a bit of a catch-all. There's titles 1 through 7 and 9. I'm not quite sure why there's no 8, but there is no 8. And within that, there are sections where Public Works is providing a specific role or task just in certain sections of those, and we're going to clean those up just to make sure that's all clear for folks. So I do want to note that the RMC 10 and 12 versions that you had in your committee package are working drafts. Traffic Operations has spent a lot of time working on them. Now they've been working with long-range planning and development services just to inform them of the changes, get their comments. And then we're also looking at the code implications of the recently approved Senate bill, I'll make sure I get the right number here, 5595, which is shared streets. And then also City Resolution of 1599 on street use and right-of-way design that the council passed. I think it was last November, December. So looking at that to see if out of those ordinances and resolution or bills and resolutions, anything needs to be changed in the code. So we'll be looking at that as well. And then we'll upload the most current versions of 10 and 12 before we come back again for the June 24th study session. So there's just a couple of items I want to draw your attention to. So we're clear from the start here. For public comment, we're proposing to post the code changes on a Let's Connect webpage, and this would occur after the study sessions with the council, so we want to get your input, and then we'll put the code changes out there for folks to see and make comment on. And the majority of the proposed changes are intended for clarification or cleanup, so there's not a lot of substantive comments, but if we do run into ones that either we become aware that need a broader audience or the council points out, then we can extend our outreach to other stakeholders. For instance, maybe downtown business owners or something like that would have a specific interest in a specific code change. So that's our plan. And then for the actual final approval, so we'll bring ordinances back to you. And what we're planning to do is finish the study sessions, gather the public comment, and then come to a regular business meeting for approval as ordinances. And it could be, groups of, it could be one, could be groups of two, or all at the very end. Just, we want to make sure that we have all the information put together, and also that we have a clear snapshot in time of the codes being updated in a lot of ways right now with the middle housing changes and things like that. So we want to make sure that we're catching it at a point where we know that our changes are layering on top of those other ones correctly. So, and I think that's about all I have to talk about. I'm not going to be able to be here for the June 24th study session, but Director Aaron Burt will be here, and Paul and Patty to present those titles and talk through the specifics of those code changes. So if there's any questions.
Wonderful. So in preparation for our study session, and in light of time, we'll just go around quickly. I see Councilmember Fields already has his hand up, and we're going to ask the team to transcribe these questions and meet us back here during the study session. We won't have time to dig into them today, but really appreciate the overview of the project. Kick us off, Councilmember Fields.
Thank you. So when I hear a technical description, as you put it, and then you sort of laid the groundwork. A lot of this is just technical and cleanup and making it compliant with regulations or laws. But then I try to put myself in the mind of a resident. And my real only question is, how are you going to impact my life? How are you going to change my mobility? What are you going to do to, getting my children to school or piano lessons or whatever? So when we get to the study session, and I don't like to be in the position of trying to be an expert on this stuff. Can you help us with impacts? What in all of these changes will be something that we need to understand from an impactful perspective? So that, maybe these other council members are a lot smarter than me, but I'm just not that good of digging it out of the dense text that you give us. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm. Yes, makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Nueva Camino, do you have any questions for the study session?
Did the questions all over my face ring true?
No, we're just going around the table. We're just going around the table. I can come back to you. Council Vice President Forsyth?
I will apologize in advance because I have a lot of questions that I'm going to send you via email. I'm just going to share some highlights right now so you don't have to write them down because they're all in my email.
Okay.
In March of 2020, the state passed a law that allows rolling stops and yields for bikes, but the code that we just saw in this package says that bikes must stop. So I want to address that discrepancy. And then I would like to have a more in-depth discussion around the parking fees and what that looks like at the study session, for us to learn more, because that's a very much Redmond-specific topic. And then on the streets and right-of-ways, I kind of want to see a crosswalk of how the fixed items and the right-of-way in general relates to the impacts of the recently passed council right-of-way policy that was approved, I believe it was last year, and how it's different, any discrepancies, how it's the same, unintended consequences. And again, there's like 12 things here, so I will send that, and I look forward to that study session.
Is that the 1599 resolution?
I think so.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I just want to make
thank
sure
you.
we're catching them all.
No, I'm sorry. 1599 is a different issue. I believe that
Okay.
Councilmember Forsyth is referencing the changes we made to fees for folks essentially leasing the right-of-way for
Oh, that
dining
one.
and
Okay,
construction.
all
Is
right.
that correct? You really did mean 1599? Oh, I'm so sorry. Take her at her word.
we'll do it.
My apologies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Vice President. And I apologize for my assumption making. Councilmember Salhoudin, do you have any questions for the study session?
Thank you. Yeah, the only thing that I would be interested to ask is around work with neighboring jurisdictions and how we're compared relative to standards or public works settings that they have, say in Bellevue, Kirkland, and other neighboring cities, and how we're making sure that we're doing something that's either better or equivalent to what other cities are doing.
Thank you. Council President Kritzer?
Thank you. I also have a couple of very detailed questions that I'll email you, but I would agree with Councilmember Fields that I think what would be helpful for these study sessions, given that there's a bunch that's kind of the cleanup work, and then there's some things in there that may be more visible to our public. And I think if you could call those things out, as well as when we think about residents or business owners, as you mentioned, when we get the feedback, there may be, something like that, or as well as for some of these internal changes, if there's any major things that will change the way things work. It sounds like you're trying to figure out mostly cleaning up to align and streamline how things do work. But I think anything that's going to be, because in even the table that you have, it says substantive versus administrative or operational. But on some of them, it's unclear to me, for example, changing a definition of highway to include under definitions of streets. That may be substantive, but it's a little bit unclear kind of how that would be a substantive change, and it may not be, there may be different tiers of substantive. So if you can bring the most kind of substantive ones to the top to be able to share out with us as well as the public, I think that would be helpful for the study session so that we can kind of move through this material in a meaningful way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate that. Councilmember Anderson, any questions for the study session? No, okay, I'll add just a couple of mine. As you have updated drafts, feel free to send them our way. It doesn't mean that we will necessarily all be able to dig in on every little detail if you do send an updated draft, but for those who it works out for, we would love to offer that opportunity, I think, to our teammates. Just a couple thoughts in terms of the filter that I'm applying when I read all these materials is how do these municipal code changes, we've been spending so much time in the comp plan, so much time in the zoning code. Now we're here in the municipal code, and how do the changes that we're making here implement Redmond 2050 and that giant group project we all just did with the community. And these two chapters in particular that we're going to study first also have a ton of relationship to the draft chapters for the transportation master plan too. So we will be looking for alignment there. One of the questions that I would love to just see reflected at each of the study sessions on this project are reflections of how you're collaborating with other departments to make sure that everyone's involved and we have a chance to make the best changes possible, most comprehensive, and reducing overall unintended impacts. And my last thought is, it is interesting that you're considering doing the Let's Connect. It's a tough audience to nail down like whose feedback because it's so detail oriented. So I just want to offer that I'd be happy to sponsor this at the Government Affairs Committee with the Chamber, and I believe that we have time in our September committee meeting if that's helpful. So myself or Amy Tsai, we can help out with that to make sure that we're getting in front of a few business owners and members of the development community that might have those detailed pieces of feedback for us.
Okay.
And Councilmember Nueva Camina, thank you.
Thank you. My question was on, it was something that I saw over in 12.08.070, and it's the penalties for violations. And the question that I have for study session is the substantive changes that we're putting in, how are we communicating those to the others that it would be impacting? Like this one specifically is calling out that each day that violations exist shall be regarded as a new and separate offense. Since this is a substantive change, how are we communicating that substantive change to those that are going to be impacted by it?
Great, thank you, everybody. Looking forward to the first of a few study sessions later this month.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the good input, too. That helps us guide as we head towards the first study session.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you so much. We'll move on with our agenda then. The next two items are informational items from the Planning and Community Development Department. Item number 1 in this section is adopting the ordinances and a resolution to conclude the work on Redmond 2050-2025 code package, the 2025 housing amendments, and downtown Redmond center plan. Introducing this item, we have back Deputy Director Seraphy Allen, Becky Fry, and Jeff Churchill. Welcome back, everyone, and thanks for being here.
Council Chair,
Yes.
I have to leave.
Okay.
I will catch up on the video.
Perfect. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Take it away, Deputy Director.
Thank you, and good afternoon again. Staff are here today to brief the committee on the final materials for Redmond 2050, 2025 code package, the 2025 housing amendments, and the downtown Redmond center plan. This is the final package of Redmond 2050 code amendments and represents an important and final milestone in this project. We are asking that these materials be placed on June 17th consent agenda, and I will turn it over to Becky to provide final information.
Good afternoon, council members. We are very excited to be here this afternoon. The stage with these final materials for the 2025 code package and the related work. As Seraphy mentioned, this is a major milestone for Redmond 2050. It is the final official piece closing out our periodic update. This package of amendments covers a lot. The zoning consolidation from 50 to 20 zones, the major restructuring of the zoning code. It implements our transit-oriented development focus areas for downtown and Marymore. We've got new zoning regulations for mixed-use zones. We've got our overhauled design standards, which is focused now on outcomes, implementing Redmond 2050 policy direction and consistency with recent state law changes. We've updated new use regulations, again, going from over 150 tables to 2 to simplify things for everybody all the way around. It updates our affordable housing requirements. It further implements the missing middle housing. It completes our center's recertification planning efforts, although as our earlier item says, the certification for the countywide planning is moving forward at the next steps. And then makes other miscellaneous revisions and edits. Since the Planning Commission's recommendation on the package, we have made some minor corrections and edits in preparation for adoption. This is a result of us merging the 4 different packages together and identifying conflicts that needed to be resolved, and also just finding errors and corrections, cross-references, et cetera. There's also a few edits that are proposed in response to continued community review to help provide clarity where needed. For one example, we added a line in 2112, which is the overlake regulations, to clarify that a simple change of use with no other building or site changes does not trigger the new requirement for a future development plan. I do want to highlight there is one edit that was proposed earlier today that we'd like to try to slide in. In 2122 public art, there is a line, and I'll just quickly share my screen real quick so you can see what I'm looking at. We had edited this to remove the old reference to design districts, which are gone now, and then update the cross-references to 2155, which is our new incentive chapter. Our public art folks this morning pointed out that with the adoption of 2155, we no longer have in public art incentives only in Overlake and Marymore, but they're now expanded in other places as well. And so we'd like to propose just going ahead and striking Overlake and Marymore Village and just leaving it as incentives for public art. And just to clarify, it's in downtown, our new urban mixed use, and a couple of other places as well. So this just clarifies if it's in the incentive program, just in general. So we'd like to slide that in as the very, very last little edit into your package. I'll go ahead and stop sharing now. And then, we have provided these changes in your packet, except for this one that came up today. There is a document that explains all of the edits that were made as a part of the consolidation. There's bullet points out of where those were minor changes and where there might have been a slightly more significant edit, like the one I just mentioned for Overlake. We also updated the issues matrix in your packet to reflect the document discussion at the May 13th study session on these topics. And we also made the change to the universal design checklist that council directed us on May 13th. So on the with council action on this package, we will update all the materials online, and we will move forward with a number of training sessions for the community and staff who administer this code. It is a significant change, so we do anticipate a lot of training and new materials that will be coming out of that. For tonight, we're happy to answer any questions in preparation for adoption, and are asking council to place this item on the June 17th consent agenda.
Well, congratulations, team. Thank you so much. We kind of color coordinated our outfits for later tonight because we have some fun things to do at the business meeting, and I might propose party hats on the 17th because this is a really fun thing to get across the finish line. I'll go around starting with Council Vice President Forsyth.
Thank you. And yeah, congratulations are definitely in order. This is a big lift, so thank you for all your hard work. I just wanted to also say thank you for bringing back that elevator size section, and I did flag that for some of our folks at the state level, disability rights folks that would be interested in how that conversation progresses, so thank you for that heads up as well.
As a follow-up to that, I did meet with our fire staff after that meeting, and we've had some conversations as well. So,
wonderful. Council President Kritzer.
Thank you so much for all the hard work on this. This is really exciting. One minor note on the agenda. This was listed as an informational item, and I think it's an action item for us to send it to consent. So it's kind of like our biggest action item on this agenda.
So sorry to interrupt, but I believe that the individual items themselves have gone through committee once already. But maybe you're right. Yeah, maybe.
Anyway, it was not meant to be a big critique, but I was a little confused because I was like, is this just informational, or are we actually putting it on the June 17th agenda? So anyway, that's all. But I will say just one quick question on the downtown Redmond center plan. Have any of the numbers changed within there since we last reviewed that?
No, great question. For the centers plan, what we did is we just assembled all the information related to that particular center into a document that we can then submit for certification. So it doesn't change anything that we've already previously adopted, it just repackages it, and that's it.
That's what it looked like to me. I just wanted to be sure that basically everything that we've already discussed and that was already in the comp plan is in here, as well as other related plans, which I see in there.
No changes.
I'm good with it. Thank you. Excited to vote on it.
Are there any other questions? And again, I do believe that these items, as we've brought them through study session, we've asked if they're okay to go to consent, but I'll do it one more time. Are we okay with sending this giant package? Excuse me, I'll go ahead and read it. Adopt the ordinances and a resolution to conclude work on the Redmond 2050-2025 Code Package, Housing Amendments, and Downtown Redmond Center Plan to consent on June 17th. Seeing thumbs, seeing lots of thumbs. So we are good to go. Thank you all. Really appreciate your work on this.
Thank you so much.
I do acknowledge that we are over time. If council is able to stay for one more quick item, please do. And as long as we have a quorum, we'll wrap up this item. The last item on our agenda is the short-term rental code improvements. Introducing this item will be Deputy Director, not Philly Marsh. I just gave you a giant promotion. Philly Marsh is also here. Kim Dietz is here, and Deputy Director Seraphy Allen is here. And council did also receive a very contextual email from Director Helen last week on this item.
Thank you.
Take it away.
So we are providing a first and brief item regarding the amendment to the short-term rental regulations and operating standards. The amendments are being drafted in preparation for the expansion to the short-term rental inventory for what we're presuming will happen during the World Cup accommodations. And so this is the first time the city is considering the regulations and operating standards for this type of business use. This is also the first touch with the City Council for your awareness of staff's work on amendments and for the preparation of community and stakeholder involvement related to this work. And we will be coming back in the fall for your review and action. Staff will present a few highlights today, and we'd like to hear any questions or concerns you might have. While our scope is staying limited because we're trying to do this in preparation for the World Cup and make any kind of consistencies, which you'll hear about, we want to include any comments or questions you might have for future consideration as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kim.
Thank you, and good afternoon, council members. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So as we are preparing, the city's preparing for World Cup activities, we do anticipate an increased demand for accommodations as part of this global event, and with Redmond being the first stop on the light rail station en route to Seattle. So with this, we anticipate an increase in the inventory of short-term or vacation rentals. Today, what we'd like to do is provide a few highlights of the project, which is to update our codes and operating standards related to these short-term rentals and somewhat to also other rental operations. So the proposed updates will be limited to the RMC, which will then return directly to the City Council for review in the fall. They would not go to the Planning Commission because it's the RMC. So these include updating business licensing regulations based on the number and type of dwelling involving the short-term rental, ensuring consumer safety, transparency for the rental units, and communication with the city and neighboring property owners, providing clarity and conformance with some state legislation, and then finally, considering a formal relationship with landlords throughout Redmond. So our ask of the council today is that as we prepare for the community and stakeholder involvement this month, next month, maybe another month, what we'd like to do is include your questions and interests regarding these short-term rentals.
Thank you so much. Council Vice President Forsyth, kick us off.
Thank you. So this is an area that I've asked about in the past, and it's been years since we've talked about, or it's been brought up again. I have a lot of concerns around short-term rentals because of what it does to driving up affordability in the community in general. So I'm going to channel Councilmember Anderson here and ask that we define short-term rental and look at what this could possibly do to our affordability in general for renting and renters, and then propose that we even consider looking at that short-term period, what that short-term period is identified as maybe even being as only as short as a month. So I know that, a lot of these are like 3 days, a week, but we do have quite a few Airbnb type short-term rentals in the community, and those I believe would be better served as longer-term rentals for community members in general. So I have a lot of questions around this topic, and I look forward to more conversation.
Councilmember Nueva Camina.
Thank you. Very similar to my colleague, a lot of concerns because Redmond is kind of lighting the way, being an example of what it can look like to be more aggressive on affordable housing. We've already seen in other cities, both regionally, nationally, and internationally, about what short-term rentals do to the localization of it, where locals can no longer afford to live there. So my concern is, while respecting the market, respecting free enterprise, and then where is our responsibility to continue to protect and provide affordable housing? One of the things that I didn't see in here is what is the penalty. Love that we are going to start creating a registry and having folks have a business license. I think that's a great step. And then for those that do not go through the process, then what? What is the consequence of that? So I'd love to see what that is. Typically, I'm all for incentivizing rather than having a penalty. I don't know if we've got enough time to figure that out and what would be the incentive. And because again, I think we've got a larger responsibility to our residents to provide that affordable housing, to say then, okay, what's the penalty? Because of course, sure, I've got an empty apartment. We also have apartment buildings where there's a difference between some developments will allow for short-term rentals, some will not. Some are actually right now incentivizing it and promoting it on Facebook, which I think is detrimental to our affordable housing inventory and what it does to the market. So just kind of how it's complicated. All that to say, it's complicated. I'm looking forward to doing a deeper dive. I'd like to see what's the penalty.
Thank you. Council President Kritzer.
Thank you. I am also I'm very interested as well in the definition question and just how we think about the different types of short-term rental folks that might engage in that, especially as we think about if we're coming up to the World Cup or some sort of big event where maybe people who've never done this before might suddenly list their house for one week on Airbnb. How does that compare to, properties that are being consistently used only as short-term rentals? And is there a threshold of kind of usage of this manner that defines like a difference between those types of rentals? As well as one of the things that's noted in here, you mentioned about the how Seattle requires certain safety inspections when the owner resides elsewhere. How does it differ if the owner resides there or doesn't reside? There are quite a few properties that are owned by people who don't live in Redmond, obviously, that then are using these for short-term rentals. So I think just kind of getting the scope of what do we have there, I think is would be helpful. I am glad to see with this. I think it will be interesting. I think it would be good to also reach out to those who do engage to be able to get their perspectives. I know I have someone in my neighborhood that often uses this as an extra source of income, and to be able to understand as we put this in, to be able to kind of get a sense of what kinds of barriers we might create for things that are a useful economic source, while at the same time kind of thinking about some of these affordable housing questions and where we might put those guidelines. The other thing that I think is really important in here that I'd love to make sure is robust is around inspection and quality, and I also appreciate the kind of good neighbor communication and awareness, since that's something that has come to council about short-term rentals several times in the past. It's kind of like, what are the responsibilities? So I think overall adding more guidelines on this makes sense, but also going to community and kind of reaching out to those who are engaging will be helpful, but maybe doing that exercise around what are we talking about when we're talking about those who do short-term rentals? You know, ADUs versus Airbnb or maybe a different thing as well. So lots of thoughts. Thanks.
Councilmember Salahuddin?
Yeah, I just want to give a +1 to what Council President Kritzer shared, specifically in, primary residents, homeowners who might not like soccer or the World Cup and just want to take a quick vacation for a month and want to list their home. So how do we make it how do we share as much information as we can to make sure that an informed decision or the right decision is being made so that there's no guidelines being broken? I think that's really a few conversations that I've had from folks who are interested, but definitely laying the groundwork is necessary.
Thank you. I'll add just a couple comments or thoughts. The word enforcement is coming to mind just as I read the proposed areas of study. What is the likelihood that we have the capacity to get folks actually registered for these business licenses and to do the capacity for the inspections? We already kind of struggle with our inspection capacity. To the points that my colleagues have already articulated, I guess one thing that is important to articulate is that we already have short-term rentals in our cities, and we have gaps in the safety of them. So regardless of what ultimately this project yields, hopefully increased safety and communication is a piece of that. And if we're talking business licenses, then obviously there's a revenue component to that. We already have short-term rentals. I agree with the concerns of my colleagues in terms of balancing our many goals around affordable housing. And I also know that we have so many homeowners associations in the city that don't actually allow short-term rentals. I would be curious if we have HOA communities and other jurisdictions, maybe overreaching, but anyway, are folks looking at changing the rules because of this opportunity next year? Are we going to see more and expanded interest in short-term rentals because HOAs are going to allow it for a short time, or are folks mostly not going to? I think we need to have that conversation and just kind of know the conditions there. Council President Kritzer.
Thank you. Just your comment reminded me of something. I would also be very interested to just know what some of our neighboring cities are looking at. It's referenced in a couple places of some other policies, but would be interesting as part of our study of this to be able to get a sense of where others are at and effective policies. I mean, we do have examples, not even just in our area, but even to our north in Vancouver. They've done some pretty intense policies around short-term rentals. And so be interesting to be able to look at, what are some of the impacts of decisions we might make around short-term rental policy as well.
Well, that certainly seems like enough to get you all started. I really look forward to the outreach and having you all back in the fall for an update and the continued conversation here with the council. Any closing thoughts? Are we good?
Thank you very much. We look forward to a lot of outreach, a lot of conversations with stakeholders, including the Airbnb and VRBO type PACs, and look forward to seeing you in the fall.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, council, for your patience. We are a bit over time. This meeting is adjourned. Much appreciated.